property, and my father's the one in jail?
Wow.
Listen, they did it to Elliot Spitzer, the governor of New York.
Right.
They checked his bank accounts. That's how they found out he was frequenting prostitutes and using cash. What chance does an average person have at the governor?
When Janet, what's her name? Because she shares the last name that I do, but as far as I know, we're not related.
You won't repeat that name.
Came out with that awful intelligence estimate equating skinheads that want to kill people of the opposite race with libertarians, right-to-lifers, people that believe in the Second Amendment, people concerned, Mike, about the size and scope of the federal government and surveillance powers and returning members of the military. Some of my conservative buddies said to me, okay, well, she knows how you feel about this because you're on the air every day, but how does she know about how everybody else feels about it? And then I said, well, because her agents can listen to your phone calls and capture your keystrokes and get your grocery list and your medical records and your hospital records and your lawyer records because of the Patriot Act. Now, are you surprised that conservatives who endorsed this monstrous legislation when George Bush was president are now reeling that it might be used by Democrats against them?
Listen, my argument in my new book, which in that title, as you know, has God, guns, gambling, and tax cuts. People, libertarians keep asking, why is God in your title? Well, first of all, I am a God guy. I'm a prayer guy. I'm a religious and spiritual guy. But here's the argument I make to religious people and I'll make to conservative people. If you give the power to government to enforce your religious views or your conservative views, the next guy who gets in who is liberal or anti-religious or atheist will use those same powers to use them against you. The end result is don't give the power to the government in the first place. Conservatives shouldn't be surprised.
When I was a lone voice here, Mike, 5 or 6 years ago, by here I mean at the great Fox News Channel, crusading and writing and speaking against the Patriot Act, you know, my conservative buddies are all saying to me, what are you worried about? What are you concerned about? You have nothing to hide. Are you finding that the people that supported this monstrosity, like maybe Jane Harmon, whose calls were listened to by the NSA spies. I realize I'm mixing metaphors here, NSA spying and Patriot Act, but it's all the big government mentality. Are you finding that some people that gave George Bush this legislative authority are now reeling that it might be used against them by a guy they voted against?
Right, exactly. That's exactly the point. That's why we don't give unchecked power to anyone in this country, and that's where the framers of the Constitution were so brilliant in setting up a government that had each power checked by another branch. And it's the breakdown of that checks and balances enabled by the Patriot Act, which again allows all of this investigative activity to take place in complete secrecy that causes the problem. And now that we see a shift in who's in power, that broad brush can paint in ways that make all of us nervous. You know, one thing, getting back to the DHS report you mentioned on right-wing extremism, you know, the danger with those kind of reports that we've been complaining about for years is that they paint with that broad brush, and that might actually start investigations when these state and local law enforcement read these reports and think, oh, I have to investigate. There are libertarians in my community. There are anti-tax protesters. You know, maybe because of this report I should investigate. Well, there was a Wall Street Journal article last month that didn't get much notice that the FBI is investigating returning Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans to determine if they've been influenced by right-wing extremists. And this is an extraordinary report because it says that the investigation started in December of 2008. That was when the FBI's new guidelines went into effect that allowed them to begin investigations without any factual basis to support the belief that somebody has done something wrong.
When George W. Bush, the commander-in-chief of these veterans, was still the commander-in-chief, and it was his Justice Department and his FBI that let this ball get rolling?
That's exactly right. And, you know, once you let the ball get rolling, you don't know where it's going to end up and whose doorstep it's going to be in front of. So that's why we have to make sure that when you know, we all want the FBI and the other state and local law enforcement to have robust authorities to go after people they suspect of being guilty of crimes. What we don't want to give them is the authority to go after anybody they want to, because who they might want to investigate today might be very different from who they investigated yesterday or tomorrow.
Peter Schiff.
Yeah, well, the problem is you talk about, the Constitution, but the problem is the government has usurped power. The courts are not enforcing the Constitution, and so now we don't have that checks and balance. There is no more due process. Any IRS agent can write his name on a piece of paper, walk into your bank, and clean out your account. They can send it to your brokerage account and take everything you have. There's been no judge. There's been no hearing. There's been no due process. The only thing you can do is try to sue to get the money back. But now you're the moving party. You've got the burden of proof. Meanwhile, you're broke. If the government cleans out your assets, how do you fight back?
You're in the political world, Wayne. Is there any chance that this stuff may be pulled back a little bit, or is it just going to get worse and worse no matter which big government party is in power?
It doesn't matter who's in power. I call Republicans and Democrats big and bigger, dumb and dumber. There's just no difference. You said, should we be surprised that all this started under Bush? Should we be surprised that the bailouts started under Bush? The bailouts of the auto companies, the bailouts of AIG, the economic stimulus package that's such a disaster under Obama. First there was one under Bush. All of this, all the unsustainable spending started under Bush. They both want the same thing, Judge, and that is power over the people. And expanding government gives them power.
Well, that's why I've always said, Obama is just George Bush's third term. He didn't change anything. He has repeated every policy.
But worse. Here's where I get mad when libertarians say Obama is Bush, and I say he's worse, and they go, no, they're all the same. And I go, no. I'm a successful American. I make good money. I've been in business my whole life. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a risk taker. But at least George Bush said, we'll have unsustainable debt and deficit, but I'll let you keep a little of your own money while we're building the debt, which is not a good idea, I admit. But Obama says, let me rape you. Let's make you the target.
We've got to stop because the computer's going to interject.
Versus 39%?
Much more than that. No, it's much more than that.
They both want huge taxes.
They do.
Neither of them believed in the free market, and neither of them believed in the Constitution. Mike German, it's always a pleasure. I hope you'll come and visit with us again. Thanks very much. Wayne Allen Root.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. The book is The Conscience of a Libertarian, Empowering the Citizen Revolution with God, Guns, Gambling, and Tax Cuts. Peter Schiff is here every Wednesday. It's my favorite part of the week. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, guys. We're going to continue with an interview from a New Hampshire jail. We don't have it yet. All right. Well, we'll continue. We'll continue until they get.
We get a reprieve.
This fellow is in jail. Well, this is a very, very interesting segment that's coming up, and it's a first for Fox because it's a live telephone interview, if we can remake the conversation, with a guy who's in a jail in Keene, New Hampshire, and he's in jail because he wouldn't turn his camera off. What a horrible crime that is.
What was he filming?
Well, he was filming police and prosecutors in the hallway of a courthouse. You'll hear him tell the story in just a couple of minutes, where a judge decided to post his own sign, his own note saying no cameras. No legislature had ever authorized it. It wasn't signed by the judge. He just told his bailiff, put out that sign, no cameras, and arrest anybody. This is in the hallway.
Well, does the judge have authority outside the courtroom?
No, the judge doesn't have the authority outside the courtroom unless there's litigation about what's going on.
Judge, that's why I always bring up the issue, which a lot of people think is a silly issue compared to all the big issues going on in the world, online poker. If the government wants to tell you whether you could play poker in your own bedroom with your own money on your own computer, can you imagine what else they'll do, including arrest you for having a camera on too long? To me, that was always a significant issue.
All right, guys, thanks very much for joining us. We appreciate it. Peter Schiff, next week.
An honor, Judge.
Always a pleasure. Next time in New York, come by. We're joined now by Sam Dodson, the filmmaker and entrepreneur of OTN Productions, Obscured Truth Network. Sam, you are calling us, I believe, from the Cheshire County Department of Corrections in Westmoreland, New Hampshire. Am I right?
That's correct. Yeah, I was arrested 44 days ago in Keene, New Hampshire, in the district court lobby for filming on public property. And
what was it that you were filming, and what was the reason stated by the police who arrested you?
Well, the charges I found out 2 weeks later were disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, failure to be processed, and later they added a charge of theft because they couldn't find the serial number under the tripod plate on my camera. I think that was really kind of an attempt just to seize a $10,000 video camera.
All right, we have the audio version of your arrest, which we're going to play in just a moment.
Okay.
But I want you to set it up for us. What are we going to hear? Who was there? Where were you? And when did this happen?
Okay, this was on April 13th in the lobby of the Keene District Court. There was another activist, Dave Ridley, a videographer, who had been arrested for filming in the public lobby as well. So I went there to do a number of things. One, to get an official copy of the court order from the clerk, and also to film in the lobby and just break that law, essentially, because I didn't believe it to be constitutional, and I was exercising a right.